Thank you. Thank you, Filippo. Thank you, President Bollinger, Dean Hubbard, the sponsors of tonight's event, which, as we've heard, has been so successful in helping fund research, instruction, and scholarships at the business school. This is obviously a very worthy cause, not only because my wife, Hope, and her father, Spencer Eccles, are proud alumni of the business school, but because of everything that they and the other Columbia B School graduates have accomplished in the world. Guided by the values that Dean Hubbard referred to earlier tonight and empowered by the knowledge and the skills that Columbia has given them. So it's a great honor to share the stage tonight with three graduates of the business school, Mark Galogli and Jamie and Paolo Lima, who've done great things with what Columbia has given them. Alas, I did not graduate from the business school, but I'm proud and grateful to be a Columbian, a member of the Columbia College class of 1981. And the next generation is getting into the act. My niece Hannah is here with my family, and she's currently a student at the university. So Columbia holds a special place in the hearts of all my family. We're all Westerners who came to Columbia and to this city when we were tender and green. In my case, I left a small town in the mountains of Utah as a teenager and traveled east to this metropolis to get an education and manage the transit that all of us must make to adulthood and to set the stage for what it is that we intend to become. If I could describe to you who that young man was and convey what I was thinking and feeling in that summer of 1976, almost half a century ago, I might refer you to the memories of another person who journeyed from her home in the West to New York, the writer Joan Didion, memories that I think will ring true for many of you here tonight who came to Columbia from afar. She wrote that for native New Yorkers and those from the East, New York was just a city, albeit the city, a plausible place for people to live. But for those who came from the West and the South, elsewhere, which New Yorkers sometimes refer to as nowhere, Didion writes that New York was no mere city. It was instead an infinitely romantic notion, the mysterious nexus of all love and money and power, the shining and perishable dream itself. I'm not sure if I read that passage before or after I graduated from Columbia, but I'm quite sure I was at Columbia when I read another story about a young man who grew up in a small town in the West, journeyed east to study at a great university located in the greatest city in the world, and had adventures and encountered ideas that would change him forever. I speak, of course, of St. Augustine, who wrote about his fateful journey from Africa to Rome and then Milan in the Confessions, which is just one of the many books that I read as part of Columbia College's justly celebrated core curriculum. It should be obvious by now that I became a philosophy major. I went on to law school, and I could explain how studying philosophy prepared me for a career in finance and government. But it would be easier to refer you to an essay just last week in the New York Times by Bob Rubin, eerily entitled, "Philosophy Prepared Me for a Career in Finance and Government." And if you change the name of the professors and the location of the action, my story is similar. But Harvard, which Bob Rubin attended, for whatever its merits may be, is not Columbia, not least because Boston is not New York. And there were aspects to the shared experience and education of all of us here that I think especially prepared me for public service. All of us here tonight, during our time at Columbia, were engaged in study and reflection on complex problems, but we were engaged in that study in the midst of the most vibrant and active city in the world. This combination leads to, in fact, it almost requires a mindset and an approach to life that is why I suspect so many of us are drawn to public service. Here, we're taught by force of where we are, to analyze and to act. We learn the benefits of careful deliberation, but always followed by effort, energy, and dedication. Given that I've spent some time in both the private and the public sector, I'm often asked where the difference lies between the two. And the answer for me can be found in this combination of thought and action. In the private sector, the emphasis is on action. Usually one must take the world as it is and figure out what must be done to maximize your advantages in the circumstances that you're given. An academic, on the other hand, can think about the world as it ought to be, but usually has no ability to make that happen. But someone in government who's in a position to make public policy can and really must think reflectively about how the world ought to be, but then is usually uniquely empowered to move the world in that direction. In my experience, you start to learn to think that way when you reflect on the world's problems in the middle of New York City in the context of the education that Columbia provides. Like many Columbia College graduates, I carry with me the lessons of that core curriculum in the best that has been thought and said, and continue to use them in one way or another constantly. If you ask me why I felt drawn to public service and now have returned again to Washington, I could refer you to the syllabus for contemporary civilization and to our reflections as young students on how to build a better world in a place where action and energy made us see that great things are indeed possible. So thank you, Dean Hubbard and Columbia Business School, for this award, which is all the more cherished because it comes from an institution that has meant so much to me and my family and continues to produce outstanding graduates such as Mark and Jamie and Paolo and many others who are building a better world. Thank you.